All right, welcome back, everybody. We are going to be working on Unit 3 today. And in Unit 3, we will be covering Chapters 3 and 4 in our text. Now, the topics for Chapters 3 and 4 are where I think things start to get a little bit interesting. Last week, we learned a lot of the basic structural elements of HTML. So just basically how to do your basic tags and structure a page. And then in your HTML basics assignment, that was kind of reinforced through homework. And then you hopefully had a chance to work on the Java Jam and the Fish Creek websites, which are kind of reinforcing those same basic structural elements. In fact, chances are when you look at your like Fish Creek and Java Jam and the code that you create with them, they're really, really similar, if not almost identical. It's just the content really that's different. And that's not by mistake. That is really just kind of designed to kind of reinforce that basic structure. It is really important that when you start moving into these other areas, when you start to add graphics and color and other effects basically to your web pages that make them look better, that you have a solid structure to build on. Just kind of like having a strong foundation for a house. You're going to have a better house if your foundation is strong. If your structural elements underneath are weak, then you run into all sorts of problems with CSS to the point where sometimes things just don't work. And it can be a little bit frustrating. But you always go back to your basic structure first whenever you're looking for a problem. Like, did you close a tag, for example? Oh, no wonder it's not styling it. You never closed it. You know, that kind of thing. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I am going to jump into the PowerPoint real quick. However, I'm going to show you something first, so you get an idea of what we're about to venture into. Okay, the topic for Chapter 3 is basic CSS and for color and text. So we're not like getting really fancy with layouts yet or anything like that. We're just doing the rudiments. But I want you to understand the capability of what CSS can do. So I put in this link here to this site called the CSS Zen Garden, and hopefully it's still operational if it is. So for all the years that I've been teaching HTML, this has been around, this site, and I always am thankful for it because it gives a really vivid example of what you can do with this technology. So HTML, what we've learned so far, is going to provide, for all the web stuff that you do, is going to provide the structure and the content for your site, or your page, or your application. Structure and content. The ideal with CSS is that CSS is a separate language with its own syntax that can be intermingled with HTML to help improve the look of what you're creating. So instead of creating like the really simple little pages that we were working on last week, you know, that look like, you know, a website from 20 years ago or 30 years ago, because that's what they looked like back then, this is going to give you the capability to take something that looks really drab like that and turn it into something where you go, oh my God, wow. You know, like, and hopefully when you learn how to really use it well, you can create that kind of an effect with the people who use your website or your application. Now, CSS Zen Garden was set up to allow for people to see the power of CSS and also to kind of challenge you, if you wish, to apply your own techniques to their code. So what this site is all about, it's just, and he says it right there, it's just a demonstration of the power of CSS and what you can do with it. So what the guy has done, notice, is he has a sample file here, an HTML file and a CSS file. And you, remember, any web page you go to, you can always right-click somewhere in the blank spot in your browser and choose View Page Source to see the source code that creates the page. And if you delve in here and zoom in, you'll see that this is a well-structured, hand-coded HTML page. So the guy wrote this all up by hand, right? He's got a slew of comments in here. But if you look at the actual content that creates the page and the structure, it's not really that complicated. In fact, probably most of the tags here you've already seen and used. Most of them. You see paragraphs, you see some divs in there, an H3. There's couple that you haven't seen yet, like section. Section isn't one we've used yet, but there's header. We played with that last week. And then you notice how they're using class and ID tags, for example. But really, it's a very basic document in terms of HTML. Nothing too complicated. In fact, if I were to take all of this, right, and copy it, bring it over to my local file system, paste it in, save it. I'm just going to drop it right on my desktop. I really, this is for, I'm going to call it demo.html. Save it. And if I go now to run this in a browser and bring it up, this, which looks a lot like what we were creating, is the same as this. It is the same HTML. So here's where the light bulb should go out. So I added this CSS styling to this, and it went from this to this. Yes. That's the power of CSS, folks. But here's the interesting thing what this guy did with the site, is he put the code out there and said, okay, well, this is what I created with that. I put my graphics in there, I chose my fonts and my layout, my cool little backgrounds, and whatever you did here. I think it looks really nice, right? It looks pretty professional and clean. And what he challenged people to do is like, well, take my code, take my HTML code, and put your CSS on it and send it back to me, right? And so people took him up on the challenge and created alternate versions of the same content. Same HTML page, different CSS styling. So if you want to see some of those, there's links right here on the side. So I'm just going to click on the first example. Now, I want you to think about this. This is the same exact HTML document with different CSS applied. The same exact content, different CSS applied. Radically different look, right? Holy cow. Way different. All right, let's try this one. Garments. Same content, different CSS. Yes, Alex? Yeah, well, CSS is what we use to style our web pages. That's the language for the styling. Facebook is run on a myriad of technologies. So you can use many languages together. That's the scary thing. Yeah. Because, and when you think of a site like Facebook, they have like a huge database on the back end, and they have back end code that you will never see. And yes, there's CSS and HTML involved, but a lot of it is handled automatically. So the HTML is really generated by the back end applications rather than being hand coded. These examples, this is hand coded HTML and hand coded CSS. But I want you to notice, like on this page, there's like stuff moving and animating. And I don't know if you notice this, if you move your mouse around, it also interacts. Like, holy cow. And, and the funny thing is in the old days, we would have to, the only way we could do something like this was with JavaScript in the old days. But now CSS has the capability to also put interactive, animating components into it, which really is kind of cool. Strangely powerful with really kind of a minimum of code. And I forget what all these designs are, but I just want to show you, this is all the same HTML code, folks, just different CSS. And when you really start to contemplate what that means, really what it means is, okay, so I can take any content, I can make it look any way I want. That's right. Really, all it's limited by is your imagination and skill. All right, so, yes, sir. All right, so hopefully you got a little bit of a kind of a revelation there, where you can take something like this ugly and turn it into something that spectacular just by using CSS alone. No JavaScript, no back-end coding languages or any trickery. It's all front-end coding. The beauty of front-end coding is you can see it all in the browser. You can go, right-click, view source, and see exactly what somebody did to achieve that effect. They cannot hide it from you, because that's how the technology works, and that's kind of the beauty of the web, too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint. And for anybody who may have already downloaded these PowerPoints, these are refreshed. The old ones were from the 8th edition. I just put the 9th edition ones in here today. So I'm actually going to re-download it myself and open it up. And I'm going to be rifling through these slides. I know there's quite a few slides here, but we're going to go pretty quickly through them. I'm going to use kind of my typical technique. You'll notice that on many of these slides that the author does already have notes in them. And so for those of you that might not have the book yet, this is actually kind of not a bad book alternative in a sense. But you still will need the book, especially when you start doing those case studies. All right, so here we go. All right, these are our topics for the chapter. So we're going to look how style sheets have evolved, what are the advantages, how we get color onto web pages, how we work with styles both on an inline fashion and then in an embedded fashion, and then ultimately working our way towards external style sheets, which is really the preferred way to work, but also how to work with some attributes that allow us to apply the styling in an appropriate way. So a lot of the stuff that you saw in that HTML document, the guy that created that had a lot of class identifiers and IDs and things like that we can use to kind of leverage CSS a little bit. And then you'll understand also what the cascade is, because when we say CSS, the acronym stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And if you think of what a cascade is, you think of like a waterfall. And a waterfall kind of cascades down from level to level. And style sheets kind of do the same thing. In fact, there's kind of a hierarchy of how styles are applied, and we'll learn how to do that. There's also a validator for CSS on W3 School, so you can actually validate your CSS code. That's kind of good to know. Now notice what the author does. He takes you to the same website that I do, because really it's that cool of a website because it really kind of exemplifies that concept. The thing that I want to tell you about style sheets that's kind of fascinating, I had Word up on the screen before to send a message to people, but when you pull up, and I'm trying to pull up a document that's kind of like pre-configured here a little bit, and you work inside of a word processor. Did you know that word processors have style sheets too? In fact, you ever see like this little area right here? Notice what it's called. Styles, right? And so like if I'm in like this area up here, or this area here, it corresponds to a certain style sheet. And all a style sheet is a pre-configured group of styling things. So like the font size, the color, the shape, the placement. It's all kind of like bundled in to this little like preset thing. And if I wanted to like change it to something else, all I have to do is click on it, right? And I'm applying a different style to it. That's in essence what we're doing with style sheets. Except we're not clicking the button to do it. We're going to a menu to do it. We're doing it through code. And there's a lot more granular control through code than you would otherwise see. All right, so I'm going to close that up, but I just want you to be aware that the concept of a style sheet once again extends from the print world. I told you how like they switched to electronic prepress in the 80s to start printing newspapers and magazines and things, and they came up with like a coding language so they can make bold and headers and all those things. And then they started getting more sophisticated with it and started applying style sheets. So if they're always applying the same font or whatever, they could preset it as a code file, and it would tell the press to do it. And that's the same thing we're doing on screen here. All right. So the thing that we mostly think of with CSS, because we think style sheets, that we are just applying certain stylistic elements. But as you guys saw in that example of the Zen garden, you can also do things like animation and movement and interactivity with CSS. And in some cases, you can even use CSS to interject content onto your pages, although that's a little bit more of an advanced skill, like more of a Web 2 skill. I just want you to understand that that's a possibility. CSS, like other web technologies, has had versions, and we're going to talk about those. But here's the advantages. The fact that we have greater control of what the stuff looks like on the page. Now, we use it for not only controlling the actual text, but the way things are positioned on the page, too. That's a little bit more of an advanced skill, but that happens in the next chapter and beyond. But the real important one there for me is the styles are now separated from the structure. When we first learn CSS, we're going to kind of intermingle the two. But the ideal is that you keep your styling elements separate, and that way you can take one style sheet that controls an entire website. So I could change one line of code and update thousands of pages all at the same time. That is kind of a mind blower, especially when you first see it in action. So that's the deal. We put it in a separate document, controls multiple pages at the same time. And then because of that, your HTML documents are smaller and easier to read. And your CSS documents are smaller and easier to read. So it's kind of a neat thing. So it goes a lot towards how you want to work. You want to work efficiently or inefficiently. And what people figured out is external style sheets tend to be the most efficient method. Now we're going to learn about all these different forms of style sheets. So in other words, we have some that we'll put directly in with our tags. Then we'll have some that we'll put at the top of our document. Those are called embedded. Inline are with the tags, embedded are at the top. External go to an external document. And we also have the capability of importing style sheets from a remote site. So if you find a style sheet somewhere else or something, some work you've done somewhere else, you can pull it into your site. That's used pretty rarely, frankly, but it's a possibility. All right. So kind of ramping up on that whole thing. So the inline styles, those are the ones we're going to put in the tags. Those are the ones we'll probably end up playing with first. But it requires an attribute in order to trigger it. So we have to put it inside the tag, tell it it's a style, and then declare it, right? Now, while that's usually frowned upon professionally, there are circumstances where that's the only way to do things. One really good example of that is email marketing, right? Because if you send an HTML email to somebody, you really can't link it to an external style sheet because most email clients will block it. So sometimes you have to put it right in the document. So that's why it's so important to learn. Embedded is similar to inline, but it covers the whole document. External, of course, go to a separate file. Notice those files typically will have a CSS extension. And then the imported ones where we can actually pull them in from other sites. So this is what we're going to try first, folks, is we're going to actually try to put in some code. But CSS has its very own unique syntax. It is a syntax that's different from HTML. So with HTML, we're putting everything in brackets, right? The greater than and less than signs. In CSS, there's a whole different way to put it together. Here we're using curly brackets and semicolons. And we'll walk through the structure of it. But as a general approach, you're going to see something like this. And this would be either in an embedded or external style sheet, the example you see here. So what they're saying in this is that we have basically three components to any style rule. First, we have to declare what we're styling. So that's the first thing. That's the selector. What are we selecting to style? In this case, they're saying the body of the document. Okay? We're applying it to the body. Then we throw up a set of curly brackets, and then we say which property are we trying to work with? We're trying to work with the color. You know, what's kind of interesting about the color one, it doesn't color the page, it colors the text. Because when they first invented this, they only saw like a reason to color text, not the page. You know, that's just how they thought. But in that case, we're affecting the text color. Then we put in a colon, and we declare the color. You can declare the color a number of different ways, including in plain text like that. If you know the color name and how to say it, so all the common colors you can think of probably will work. Might not achieve the exact effect you want, but they probably will work. So sometimes when I'm just doing stuff really quick, I just want to say white, black, red, blue, green, whatever. I just do that. It's easier to type the word in than to learn the codes that go with it. So you have that kind of like three-faceted approach. What you're selecting, the CSS selector, so what item you're attaching to, what style thing you're going to do, and then what you're actually doing. So that's the general approach. All right. So if we were to kind of ramp it up a little bit, so we had a simple thing where we were just going to color the text before, but you know what? I also want to make the background different too. You can actually do that in a combination. So you can actually put in a color. Notice the colon right here, the color. And because I'm putting in a second style now you also have to put in a semicolon that you see right here to separate them in the listing. And then basically it's indicating that, okay, what's the next thing you're styling? First I colored the text, now I'm coloring the background. Now, the rule in CSS is whatever style is listed last, you don't have to put a semicolon at the end. You technically don't have to have it there. But my general rule of thumb for students as a recommendation is always put it in, even if you don't need it. Because then you're going to go and add a style later and you forgot that you didn't put the semicolon there and then it comes back to bite you. Right? That's just kind of what happens. But notice here we used common names for colors. And in an example below, we're using what they call hex codes. Uh-oh. What the heck is a hex code? All right. Interesting thing is with computers speak binary, right? Zeros and ones. And hex is actually not zeros and ones. It is actually a base 16 number system. Okay, why 16? Because 16 is a power of 2. That's why. Okay, so in the base 16 number system, we can count up. So I'm just going to bring up a Notepad++ here as kind of like my scratch pad, I suppose. In a base 16 number system, well, actually, let's go to base 10. So in a base 10 number system, right now it's like hiccuping. All right, and that was recorded into the thing. I'm just trying to get Notepad++ to respond to me. Okay, there it goes. But it captured everything, including my frustration, like a gorilla pounding on the keyboard or something. So in a base 10 number system, we have 10 digits available to us, right? We count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? That's all the digits. And then when we get to 10, we start over again. We go 10, 0, 10, like that, right? That's base 10. In a base 2 number system, we count 0 and 1. And then when we go to 3, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5, and base 2. Okay, that's binary. Base 2 or binary. Hex or base 16 has 16 characters available to it. All right, well, here's the problem. We can only do this, right? And in fact, it's stupid for me to type. I should copy paste. And then when we get to 9, how do we represent 10 in a base 16 number system? We do this. We go A, B, C, D, E, F. I don't know why F went down there, but. And so when you get past 9, A is 10, B is 11, C is 12, 13, 14, F is 15. So if I want to get to 16, I would say 1, 0. In a hex number system, 10 is equal to 16. Got that? Okay, not going to be on a test, but you should kind of understand this because when we do color codes in HTML, the old school way was we could only use hex code. And you know you're using a hex code because they always preface it with a hash mark. And then they take the colors and they break them down. So this here, the 0000FF, is blue. Right? You going to memorize that? Believe it or not, I kind of memorized those a little bit. Background colored yellow, we got FF00. Yeah, okay. Sure, it makes sense. Right, that's probably what you're saying to yourselves, right? Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. So we're gonna break those colors down so you understand what hex codes are a little bit later. But there's a few different ways to declare colors. And I'm going to kind of try to teach you all of them, but I'm going to recommend certain approaches as being better, and you'll see why. So some real common things that you do with CSS, and really kind of some of the things we're going to learn in this chapter, are the styling formats that you see here. And the reason that you learn these first is because these are the ones that you probably will use most often, right? Changing background colors and which font you're using, which color you're using. Is it bold, or is it italic, or is there how much space between a line, or that kind of thing? So these are some of the real common ones that we're going to learn. All right. Some of the elements that you work with will have certain values that you can apply to them based upon what they are. So for example, if you're working with a color, you can apply color to it there's about 5 or 6 different ways that you can declare a color. And you saw 2 of them already. You saw hex, and you saw just using the name, and they both work. But I can also use RGB and RGBA, and I can also use HSL and HSLA, and I can also, it goes on and on and on. There's all these different ways to do it, and a lot of them overlap. For some things, for example, like the font family, well, you're not going to put a hex code or a color name in there. You're going to put the name of a font in there, right? So you have to know a little bit about fonts, and they fall into a few different categories. And then some things will be size elements. So you see, like font size, we can declare font size in a few different ways too. Sometimes with plain words, but more often with numeric values that represent either points or pixels or relative sizing to other elements, and those are all important. So we're going to learn about all that stuff. Same is true for some of these. And frankly, when it comes down to learning these things, here's a little secret, folks. Some HTML people have certain ones memorized, the ones they use all the time. Most of us still have to look things up no matter how long we've been doing it because we just forget. Or we use tools that help us get it done. No one can memorize all this stuff. There are so many different style elements and so many different possible ways to do it. It's impossible to memorize. So there's no embarrassment in looking it up. Where do you think you might go look this stuff up? W3 Schools. That's the #1 spot you should go to. But there's also a myriad of other websites too. All right, so these slides go through and talk about all the different things that you can do. And frankly, it's time to actually start playing with it a little bit. And so I'm going to pull out my code editor, and I'm going to show you how to do a couple of the things they already showed us, just to play with it. Okay? I'm not promising beautiful results right now. I'm just going to show you that we can do it. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and go to your file folder, and we're going to start with file management, right? So why do we always push this file management thing on you? Because it's critical. So I'm going to go to my Web1 folder where I'm storing all my work, and then I already have a 2019 fall folder, and I already have a Unit 2 folder, right? Well, I don't want to recreate my work that I already did, right? That's silly. I'm going to build on the same page that I was doing before. However, I don't want to change what I already had created. So I'm going to create a version. I'm actually going to just right-click and copy my folder, and then I'm going to paste back in, and then I'm going to rename it. Now, my methodology here is I kind of know I'm just going to keep building on this as I go. And so in essence, what I really just did is I created a backup. Right? My unit 2, I'm leaving it alone. If I screw up something I'm doing right now, I can always go back to unit 2, copy it over again, and start over. And this is kind of a little bit of a tip for you guys. Professional coders learn the hard way, sometimes often, before they get smart and learn to back stuff up. So whenever you're working on something and you made a significant stop and it's like looking good, working right, stop, close down all your stuff, save it, make a copy of it, and then come back and work on it again. So you have something to go back to, so you have a baseline to return to. Don't expect that technology is always going to work with you. Always make backups of your stuff. Always make versions of your work as much as you can. You will not regret it. Trust my words. If you wait till something screws up, then you need to go to a backup and that you don't have because you just overwrote all your unit 2 stuff. Oops. That's one of the reasons why I asked you to zip and upload too, because then I have the backup for you. So just keep that in your head. So now in unit 3, I have the 2 pages I made last time. Right. I'm going to pull up the index page, and I'm going to bring it up inside of Notepad++. And you guys can open it with whatever tool you want. We will talk about tools as we go along too. But I just want to try a couple of the things they're talking about. So here's the most basic of approaches. I'm going to go to the body tag in my document. And right after the word body, I'm going to insert a space. And then I'm going to type in the word style. And then an equals, and then a set of double quotes. And notice I created the opening and the closing double quote at the same time. And that's a habit I want you to get into. If you use a higher end tool, and I'm just going to throw a couple names out there, like Visual Studio Code or Brackets or WebStorm or some of the other IDEs that people recommend, a lot of those tools will automatically close the double quotes for you. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to try one of the styles that they recommended. I'm going to type color, a colon, that's 2 dots stacked, that's the shift of the semicolon key. And then I'm going to, blue doesn't work for me. I'm going to go with purple. I'm more of a purple person. And then I always recommend you put the semicolon in there. I don't have to, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a save. I'm going to come up to the run menu, or go to your browser, whatever. Let's use Firefox this time. And bring it up. And you're going to see that same ugly page I created, but this time what happened? All the text is purple. Not the greatest to look, but hey, it worked. Right? Notice the links are still colored blue except for the ones that I visited. Right? So if I click on Contact Us, which should still work, that's still on black. Now that one's purple too, but I can go back to Home and it sticks. Okay? It's a real basic inline style. Why do they call it an inline style? Because it's in line with the code. It's right in the HTML code. I can add an additional style to this, and I think what they did is background dash color. And what color did they use? Yellow? I'm just warning, it's going to hurt. All right, I'm going to save that. You guys got that typed in? Notice that it's all lowercase. There are no spaces in the style attribute that we're going after, right? Background dash color, colon, and then I'm just using the color name yellow. Save it. Go back to your browser and refresh. Oh my God, that hurts. Don't ever do that to me. Okay, one thing that you learn, sometimes the hard way, is what looks good and what looks bad. And there really are rules for this kind of stuff. There's general aesthetic rules that you can actually learn over time. And one problem I see with a lot of young web designers is color choices aren't really always very smart. Spacing and placement was very smart, but these are learnable techniques, totally. It's just a matter of kind of being coached a little bit. Some people will look at a page and go, what's wrong with this? This is awesome, right? Trust me, it's not awesome. These are what we consider very strong colors, and sometimes strong colors give some people problems. Why? Some people are colorblind, or worse, they're old. You know, and older people like me tend to want to see more high contrast. You know, like for example, I wouldn't want to put like a stronger yellow color for the text and still have a yellow background. I'd never be able to read it. Right? The general rule of thumb is you want a lot of contrast between your background and your foreground so you can read the text. As a fail-safe, white background, black text, you know what? It works great. It's worked for millennia, right? There's other colors you can use, obviously, but that's just a really primitive example. Please don't use strong colors like that. This is a suggestion, all right? Now let's talk about the color declarations a little bit with the hexadecimal numbers. So the way that they do this with hex is, and once again, I'm going to my Notepad++ just as kind of a scratch pad. So when you do hex colors, they're always declared with the hash sign first. That tells you that you're using the base 16 number system. And then the things are grouped, okay? So hex colors and screen colors work in what we call RGB format, so RGB. And it stands for, guess what? Red, green, blue. That's what it stands for. And when you have the hex values, they're paired up. So it's like if you do 0, 0, and I'm leaving a space on purpose. You wouldn't normally put a space in there. 0, 0, and then I go FF. The first two digits are for red. The second two digits are for green. And the third two digits are for blue. So 0, 0, 0, 0, FF. The FF is blue to the max. It's like, you know, it's like if you're using base 10, it's like saying 99. It's like it's maxed out before you get to 100. This is maxed out before you get to 256. FF also stands for 255 numerically. Yeah, it's like, how do you memorize that? Well, trust me, it's been years. So FF is maxed out, and it tells me it's blue. Whereas if I put the FF in the first position, like if I put it here, and the last ones were 0, 0, what is that? That's red, because it's full tilt on the two red ones. And then, of course, if I took the last ones and did FF here, now what do I have? Red and blue make purple. Right? Now, if you think that, you know, you can actually change these values, so they don't have to be full up, whatever they are, they can go from anywhere from 0 up to 255. And using all those hex values, you can declare, I think it's like 64,000 different colors. That's a lot of colors. So you can get pretty fine graduations of color. There are tables that you can actually find. I think our book has one in the back, but you can also go out to the web where they show you what the hex colors are and what the names for them are too. So if you wanted to use like the name version of a color, there's actually tables for that. So let's move on to the next slide. Or actually take a really quick look here. So look how they do black. I think that's kind of interesting. Black is all zeros. Because we're working on a screen, we set all the colors to nothing. It's the absence of color, or light really is what it is, so the screen is black. If it's white, all the colors are full tilt, just max brightness on everything, forms white. All the colors mixed together form white on the screen. You want something in between black and white? You pick a value in between. It picks all C's. If you dropped it to like all 8s, it would be a lighter gray. It just gives you kind of ways to do the different colors. There are charts, like I told you out there, like this. where you can go find stuff. Our book has it, and a lot of those charts will also show you the names. All right. Now, the funny thing is, we have an issue with computer platforms that's kind of existed historically. It's kind of mitigated a little bit, but in the past, PCs and Macs use different colors. And you know what? Some of that still exists today. The way that they would mix the colors on a Mac and a PC were different. And with a web palette, they actually have what they call a collection of 216 web-safe colors. And in the past, we used to teach people this thing. So, like, for example, if you open up this link here, it might be better off just copying it. I'm not in PowerPoint mode because normally I'd be able to click that. Let's take it to a browser, open up a tab. They would show you the web-safe color chart, meaning that if you pick one of these colors, it will look the same on a Mac, the same on a PC, the same on a phone, the same on a game system. And these are still considered the web-safe colors, but what's happened in the interim is all the platforms have gotten much better processing color. So I really kind of effectively tell students, don't really worry about this too much. Where it will get really particular if you're working for a company, let's say like Coca-Cola, the red that they use for their logo is a very particular red. And if you get that particular red on one screen and you put two computer screens next together, and you guys should try it between your laptops and your desktops and your phones, you'll see that sometimes there are slight color variations. You need to be aware of that. People that are really, really particular, I always go back to the web-safe color chart because they can ensure it will look identical on all the other systems. When you fall off this chart, there's a possibility that it will look a little different on different systems. You can't freak out to that. Okay, but I think for the most part, we don't really worry about it these days because computers have really gotten better about processing them. All right. Now, a lot of different ways to choose colors. All right. So, how do you know what color to use? Well, damn it, I know my favorite color is orange, and I'm just going to use orange for everything, right? Yeah, but really, is it really just straight orange, really? Now, if we were like in an art program, they go through entire courses on teaching color theory, how it all works, and where it all derives from. Us as computer people, we work with what we call the RGB color palette, and people that work in the print world work with the CMYK color palette, which is different. So in other words, to get color on paper, you have to mix different kinds of colors together, cyan, yellow, magenta, and black, to print on paper. To create for screen, we use RGB. And sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect between those two formats. However, we have these really, really cool color tools that are available to us now that when I was starting out doing this stuff was, all I had was that chart in the back of the book when I started out. But now, you know what, you guys? You just bring up a browser tab, you just go to Google and just type color picker. And you know what? Google's just got one built in. All right, so what color do you like? Well, I don't know. Let's see if we can find, I'm kind of partial to that kind of like indigo kind of range, like somewhere around here. And, I didn't really want it that strong. I maybe want it a little softer, a little darker, whatever it happens to be. You just come in and you find it. You know what? See what's happening at the bottom of the screen, though, as I move the thing around? You guys catching that? What's happening is all these codes down here relate to the codes that we use for doing HTML and or print. So notice the breakdowns. Notice that they first provide the hex code. So if I wanted to get this exact color on my web page, I could just come in here, find the color, there's my hex code for that exact color, copy paste it into my thing, and I have that exact color. Right? If I choose one of the other color formats, the listings for the codes are down below. So RGB is actually the more modern way to do hex. And frankly, folks, I'm going to recommend that's the one that you use if you really have to get to particular colors for a lot of different reasons. One reason is you can also include opacity or transparency with it, which you can't do with hex. And all it takes is adding one more value. So you're ready to add transparency automatically. People that have worked in like Photoshop or Lightroom or any of those kind of products will be familiar with some of these other formats. CMYK is for print. Then you have these other two, which are basically, this one's hue, saturation, and luminosity. And I forget what this one stands for. Hue, saturation, and I don't know. Whatever, think of something. I don't know what that one stands for. But those second two can be used on HTML documents as well. I don't see them used very commonly. And usually you have to go to a third-party tool to figure them out. RGB is a natural extension of hex, because we're really just taking the hex digits and then switching them to the numerical equivalents is all we're doing. I like RGB quite a bit, but there's a color picker right there that you might want to use. There's other tools too that you can go out, websites that do this stuff. And you know what? We can explore a couple of these really quick. So if you wanted to do a monochromatic color scheme, they're suggesting this one. And what they're trying to do is they just have a different tool for picking it. I don't really like this one too much. The one that I always used to use quite a bit is this one. So it's called Cooler. This is an Adobe tool. It's online and it's for free. And what's really amazing about this one is because Adobe is like so big, in the graphics world, they create these tools for their users. And of course, sometimes they share them with the world. But let's just say that you're doing, any sort of design here, and you see what's happening is how they have like these complementary colors, and they show them on the color wheel and how they interact with each other. Color and colors working together is not an accident. It's all based on mathematics, folks. That's the fascinating thing about it, because we're dealing with light waves, which are basically electromagnetic emanations that have frequencies, and all those frequencies are mathematically describable. And because of that, there's mathematical interactions and complements and things like that. So you can actually go through these what are complementary colors? There's complementary colors on the opposite end of the color wheel, right? So like if you have your primary color is red, like the one in the center, it shows you what the complementary colors are that work with that. If you want to go with compound color expressions, it shows you like all these different formats of colors that basically work together. And they work together because mathematically they work together. It's not an accident when people choose colors. Good designers use tools like these because they know that it's pleasing to the eye or whatever. Now, sometimes you still, you make a brute force of all these things, but if you choose one of these tools, so let's say we go with the triad approach. Notice down below here, they show you the hex code for all the colors. They also show you the RGB values, if you wish, or any of the others that are available. And if you scroll down, it shows you all the values relative to it. I think this is an amazing tool considering it's a website and it's free. This is my favorite one, if you're not picking up on that. It's not the only one out there. Sometimes if I'm quickly picking a color, if I have Photoshop up already, I just go to Photoshop, honestly. I think it's a better tool. But you can also pull up one of these things or just a Google color picker really quick and grab something. And I want to point you out to something even cooler than that. And this is, I think, kind of a blow-away thing. I don't know if Firefox has it, but I do know that Chrome has it. So I'm going to go to Chrome really quick and do this. So I'm going to just paste in that same URL. It doesn't really matter what URL I'm going to. And then I'm going to do a right-click inspect. And we're going to talk about the inspect tool a little bit later on. But this is kind of like taking the view page source up a notch. All right. So now we're in the back end here. And whenever I find anything in my CSS that declares color like this, there's a possibility that we can actually go out there, and I'm trying to figure out where they have the tool now. Oh gosh, Okay, I'm going to have to find the tool to show you. But basically, we have a tool where it switches to an eyedropper. You can just go right to the page, find a color you like, grab it, and it tells you what the color is. And I love that. Photoshop's got that tool built in. I'm just forgetting. I'm having a kind of like a brain movement right now. I'm just not remembering how to pull it up on the screen. But it's in here somewhere. If somebody finds it and remembers, and I thought it was just by like virtue of like just typing in or changing a color. You just go in here and I don't know. Yeah, and this is kind of what's fascinating is I can come in here and just mess with other people's sites too. Oh, there it is. You see how I did that? I just double clicked on the color and there's a little eyedropper. I can come out here and pick any color I want, pixel by pixel, and select it, and it just does it for me. That's built into Chrome. Okay. We'll investigate that tool some more, but I just want to make you aware of it. When you're picking colors, there's a lot of ways to go. Understanding them a little bit helps, but kind of an interesting thing. Now, we did a little bit of this already, but they want us to go in and change our H1 to red, and we'll talk about it as we do it. So I'm going to go back to my document that's open. I really don't like what I did here, so I'm going to get rid of this stuff. That was just an example. But let's actually start coding some of our content to be colored. So let's start with what they suggest. Let's take the header, throw in the style tag, and then right here, we're just going to say color, and I'm going to say red, just like that. I'm going to save it. We're going to bring it up in the Firefox again, and there's my red text. You want to put in a different color? You want to throw in a hex code? Go for it. It's up to you. Right now, we're just sticking with basics. The important thing is, if you right-click and view your source here, you'll notice that that color and that code, it's right there. It's visible for the world to see. Okay. This approach, because we're putting the style directly inside the tag, we call this inline styling because it's in line with the HTML. It's happening right where your content is happening, right where the tag is happening. It's called inline. All right. There's a couple little rules about it. It's got to be within the body part of the page. So you can't style stuff in the head section because nobody can see it anyhow. Only stuff within or including the body tags. You have to use an attribute. So this thing that we added here, style equals, it's inside of a tag. So that's called an attribute of the tag. So when we say attribute, that's what we're talking about. So I think that's kind of a thing. Can I put more than one style in there? Well, I already showed you that you can, right? How many can I put in? As many as you want. 100? Yeah. You could do 100 of them if you want. I wouldn't put them there if I had 100 of them, but you could. Nothing's stopping you. The browser will still do it. All right? And notice that you can, if you apply like that secondary thing that they're doing there, I'm just going to copy their code. I'll just type it in. Right? They're taking that H1, they're going to add a second style to it, and they're doing that background color thing again. A colon, and then what they did was gray, but they did it with a hex code, and I think they use all C's. Does it matter if they're lowercase or uppercase? Formally in the past, they had to be uppercase. You see a lot of this, but really they can be lowercase too. You don't really care. That form's a gray. Back over to the browser, do a refresh. All right. That's not the prettiest thing in the world, but you know what? It's also not too bad, right? Doesn't look too bad. Creates an effect. Certainly makes Mr. Robot look a little more like something. All right, so we're just following their example here. Now, the interesting thing about this is, well, okay, that's a really cool effect and all, but, you know, what if if I'm styling a paragraph, and I want all my paragraphs to have the same style? Do I have to add that style tag to each paragraph tag? No. And this is why we use a thing called embedded style sheets, where we actually take a section of our page or of our code in the head section, and we set up style tags like this. Opening one and a closing one. And then inside here, we will put all of our CSS styles. However, we will then be using, once we're inside those style tags, we will use CSS syntax to declare them. So this is what I mean by that. So for the body, I would set up the body as the selector. Notice I take both of my curly brackets right away. And then the typical pattern is you go like this, you separate those. You indent again, at least a couple spaces, 2-3 spaces. And then you change the color, let's say of your text. I want it to be black, but not too black. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you guys notice this on web pages now, but a lot of web pages are doing this. They actually take the text and instead of making it full on black, they bring it down like one gray level. So, and what was the hex code for black? All zeros, right? So what if I went just a little bit lighter? What if I do like 2s? I'm going to try that. All right, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back to the browser while it's still open, and I'm going to refresh the page. Now, let's talk about refreshing the page. How do you refresh the page? Well, you hit the refresh button, right? And that's what a lot of people do is they just click this. But you can also right-click and refresh. And there's 2 keystroke ways to do it. One is Control-R to refresh, or F5 to refresh. And then the third way, Control F5. That's a powerful one. So if you ever make a change on a page and you're refreshing it, now I refreshed it a whole bunch of times. See the tab refreshing? Can you tell that it even changed colors? It did. Let's right-click and make sure that stuff loaded up. Well, I can read it, so it must be right. But you know what? I'm not trusting that it's working. Oh, I can't change this code, duh. Okay, so I gotta go back to Notepad++. And you know what? I want to make sure that it's working. I'm gonna just type in some like nonsense stuff here. Is that 6 characters? Now let's see if it changes. Come back and refresh. Oh, that certainly changed. So that gray that I was trying to achieve, 2 is probably not very effective. Maybe I'll try like 4s. And now we'll see it change for sure. There's my refresh. And it's not quite black. It's black, but it's not quite black. All right, back to the code so you guys can see that really quick. You want to put in a background color? We can do that here too. It's got to be all lowercase though. Have you guys noticed with Notepad++, now those of you working on your own machines will notice this, with Notepad++, the more you use the product, the stuff that you type in, it starts to memorize it, and then types it automatically for you. It doesn't happen when you first launch a product, though. You have to do it a bunch of times. So, you know, I don't know what color I want. I'm really kind of like hemming and hawing. I'm not really sure what I want. So you know what? I'm going to go to the color picker on Google, and I'm going to try to pick a background color that isn't obnoxious. So maybe yellow is really sucky, but maybe this really light beigey gray kind of thing. You know, it's an antique white. If you want to get like, you know, kind of like weird about it. Like on your screens, I look up there and it still looks white to me. But on my screen, I can see the difference. And that's a little tip there as well. TV monitors aren't as high quality as computer monitors, folks. I don't care high-end they are. You have to get a really high-end TV to look as good as and as accurate as a computer monitor is. And not all computer monitors are made equally as well. In fact, professional graphic artists and designers color calibrate their monitors so that what they're seeing on the screen is really what they're seeing. Most screens, especially laptop screens, are usually off a little bit. You have to color calibrate them. Sometimes it's just a matter of the quality of your thing. So right now that looks pretty white to you guys, right? To me it looks off-white, so I actually have to make it a little stronger, right? So where you can actually kind of see the difference. Now you can see it, right? The other thing you should check out is if you're looking at that on a screen like that, I'm walking away from the mic on purpose, by the way. And if you move around, the color changes as you move it. This screen, most of the screen in the middle looks different than the one in the there it looks almost white still. Here you can see it, and as you move, colors change. The other thing you should notice is when it comes up on these big screens, these projectors and stuff, oh my God, these can destroy your colors. Right? And as a web designer, guess what? You have to worry about that. Because what looks good on your screen might not necessarily look good on another screen. That's why when I always did, development work, my wife's like, why do you have 8 screens on your desk? I need them, honey. Right? Battlefield, television. Actually, it's more like different versions of Windows, different machines, different ages of monitors, and I would test it on all the environments and go, yeah, looks good on all of them. Works. It's not perfect, but yeah, it works. But you have to consider those things. So a good designer will typically own a Mac, a PC, and then various versions of each. And tablets, and phones. Never throw away your old devices, because you can use them to test your web pages. All right, so there's my color. I'm just going to grab that hex code, copy it, bring it back over to my document. So my background color is going to be that. I'm going to save it, go back to my browser, refresh once again. Let's see the background color. Okay, not too bad. Right? If it's not working, then we have to start looking at why. If you're using the style tag, make sure you open the style tag and close the style tag. To close it, remember the slash has to be at the front, not at the end. So open and close the style tag. Then you have to declare what you're styling. Then you have to open and close your curly brackets. You notice how when I highlighted my curly bracket with Notepad++ did, and most editors that are good do this, they'll show you where the closing one is. Right? And then make sure that your declarations are all spelled correctly. They all have to be lowercase. So if you're declaring a property that you're styling, all lowercase letters. If you're putting in background color, there's a dash in the middle. It has to be a dash, can't be an underscore, and there can't be spaces in there either. After each one of the declarations, you have to put in a colon, not a semicolon, right? 2 dots, not dot and comma. So there's a colon in the middle, and then at the end of each statement, there's a semicolon. Because I put it in the head section of the document, this will apply globally to anything inside the document. So here's where the advantage comes in. Let me give you an example. Right, the body, I could have just as easily put that in here, and it would have done the same thing, because you know what, there's only one body in the document. But I do have multiple paragraphs in the document, right? So if I wanted, for example, to change the color of the text in all the paragraphs at the same time, I would add a new style rule here, and I would just very simply say color, and I want to do something dramatic, so know that it worked. I'm going to do red. And then save it. And now let me refresh here. In fact, I'm going to leave the code up, so I'm going to do this like side-by-side thing that I do sometimes, so you can still see the code. I'm about to do a refresh on the left side of the screen, so here's my refresh. Now notice all of this text turned red, this text turned red, Even the footer down here turned red because all of those things are inside of paragraph tags. The stuff that was not did not turn that color. So this is a lot more efficient than going to each paragraph tag and throwing in a style. I put it at the top of the document and it catches all of them. That's pretty cool, right? So that approach where you put the style tags at the top and it covers the whole document, that's called an embedded style sheet. Some people also call it internal style sheet. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint here. I'm kind of contemplating a break here in just about a minute or two. All right, so they give us this example with the embedded style sheet, and I just want to make sure. Of course it's not responding. Oh, there we go. I must be pushing my machine to the limit here somehow, although I'm not sure why. So, you know, they show you the approach. I'm just trying to see if there's any like major points that I'm missing. I think I covered that already. And I use the example of a paragraph, but if you wanted to achieve an effect like what they're showing here, you could copy that code in directly and you'd get the same look. And notice, like with their H1, they made their text color really white and the background really dark, keeping that contrast rule going. So that's an approach you can use. And you know what? Actually, it doesn't look too bad for being a basic HTML. So some of it is just kind of in the eye of the beholder, frankly. All right. We reached the checkpoint. This is a great time to take a pause, folks. Okay? So let's take a pause here. Stand up, do a walkabout. All right, we're going to pick up again here now that we're back from our break. I'm going to start working on some text stuff, so this is kind of a good natural transition. So we learned how to like apply basic colors to text and basic colors to a background. Not too bad, right? Not too difficult at all. And you can see how you can actually create, you know, some pretty interesting little effects even with those couple of simple tools. A big thing for people that do, you know, front-facing content or, you know, front-end work in a browser, what the people see when they surf the web, is to also control what the fonts look like. The default font, when you're working in a web browser, like showing a web page, you guys are probably aware it looks like a basic, like a Times Roman or something, right? And that's exactly what it is. All browsers have default fonts that they can display. The default font for all the browsers seems to be this Times Roman, depending on what platform that you're working on. You know, there might be slight variations on the name of that, but basically it's the same font. And the Times Roman is actually what we call a serif font, and I'm going to zoom in really, really close here and tell you what a serif font is. A serif font is a font that has tiny little decorations on the letters. So the little foot at the bottom of the M and the little flare at the top and the curlicue and the round over, those are all called serifs, right? And in the old days, they did that because they thought it was more readable, right? The interesting thing is our browsers will load this font as a default if you don't declare one. And it is possible for the user to go in and declare their own default font. In fact, way back in the early days of the web, I hated looking at Times Roman, so I'd go in my browser and change the font. Oh, totally dumb, right? So that's kind of a scary thing, because if you don't declare fonts for the websites that you're creating, what's going to happen is your users might have the ability to change the font to something they want. And sometimes a 1 or 2 pixel difference on a font can actually break the whole web page. That's not a good thing, generally speaking. So as a designer, you always want to control all the fonts on your page. It's just a recommendation. Don't ever leave any of them undeclared. You should always declare one for the whole website or the whole page. Always. That's my thinking. Unless, of course, you want people to change the font, and that's really kind of up to you. In terms of CSS properties that we will play with in this chapter, we're going to look at the font weight, which is how bold a font is. The style, which allows us to make it italic, and a few other things, but that's the main one we'll look at. The size of the font, so we can dynamically control how big it is. And then also the font family, which actually indicates which font we're using. Probably the one that's most important to us once we've actually selected the font is how we choose the sizing for the font. And, you know, the only sizing thing that we really played with so far was that tag for small. Remember we used that as a tag? And it's really kind of considered a deprecated tag, but you can actually use that in CSS too. So if I said, you know, font size small, it would have the same effect as using the small tag in regular HTML. And notice that, you know, the default size for a font, if undeclared, is the medium. Okay, so this is kind of interesting because they show the sizing in a few different formats. When we work on a screen, our screens are measured in pixels. And you know what? You need to know the resolution of your screen. As somebody who's working as an IT person, let me show you how you can figure that out. It's different on a Mac, of course, but I'm on a PC right now. I just use the Windows key and the letter D together to go to the desktop. Then I'm just going to right-click, and then I'm going to go to Display Settings. And that'll bring up this tool here in Windows 10. And on my main screen, the one that you guys are seeing here in the classroom, it'll tell you what the resolution is. So you see this box here, it says Display Resolution. And it says 1920 by 1080. That happens to be like a full HD size. 1080 top to bottom is what you need for doing high-def video. But if I was to take my screen and look at it like on a microscopic level, it means there are 1,920 little boxes going across and 1,080 going top to bottom. That's the whole screen. So the default size for a font in a browser is 16 pixels. So it's 16 dots high. Provided your browser is set to 100% and you don't have any zooming set up, like I have my displays a little bit zoomed. That was kind of the default for this resolution. If I switch it to 100%, and you can see the effect of it when I do that, it